The room smelled like polished brass and pride. Fort Liberty did not often host ceremonies that felt like weddings, but this one did. White chairs, blue banners, flags resting in quiet authority, proud parents stiff in dress clothes, flashing cameras, and in the middle of it all stood my stepbrother Evan Holt, grinning like the sun rose because he decided it should. His brand new gold bars gleamed under the lights. My uniform did not sparkle. It never needed to. I was not there for applause. I was there because duty teaches you to stand even when you want to run. I held my bearing at the back of the hall in my Class A uniform, shoulder-square shoes silent against the floor. I blended into discipline the way others blended into celebration. Evan spotted me. He handled the mic like it was a trophy. He did not look like a soldier yet. He looked like a boy who had never known what sacrifice felt like but expected the world to bow anyway. The crowd clapped when his name was called. My mother dabbed her eyes. My stepfather puffed his chest like he had just been promoted. I waited. I breathed. I reminded myself I had survived things harder than silence. Then Evan stepped down and approached. Cameras followed his steps like obedient pets. He leaned close so only I could hear. His smile stayed sweet, but his eyes sharpened. Sergeant at 27. Still stuck at bottom level, I guess. Guess the Army keeps you around for parking tickets and gate duty. My jaw locked. I had heard versions of that for years. I did not flinch. It takes discipline to stay still when ignorance demands reaction. Congratulations, Lieutenant, I said softly. He mistook calm for weakness. He smirked wider. You know everyone wondered if you would show up. Family thought you would be too embarrassed to stand beside real officers today. Real officers. My hands curled inside my gloves. I thought about training fields in the July heat. I thought about Poland winter and mud in my boots. I thought about dust storms in Kuwait and the way fear tastes before dawn missions. Then I thought about this room filled with people who believed medals only counted if blood never touched them. I held my silence like a shield. Evan did not like shields. He liked targets. Our mother approached just close enough to whisper proudly to a guest. So proud of Evan. He always had leadership in him. Avery just followed orders. Always did. Always will. I kept breathing. I stood straighter. Discipline. Bearing. Integrity comes quiet until it does not. Evan leaned in again. Must hurt. Watching me outrank you day one. Guess being a soldier does not mean much if you never rise. The insult slid across my skin, not deep enough to wound, but heavy enough to bruise pride. Then it happened. He grabbed my arm. Not a dramatic yank. A quiet pinch of fingers at my sleeve. Hard enough to sting. Hard enough that a nearby guest gasped. He hissed through his teeth. Stand tall if you can. But remember, you take orders from officers like me now. And then his hand moved fast, a sharp crack of contact against my cheek. Quiet, off camera, hidden by bodies and bouquet stands. But real, my vision flashed white. The room did not notice at first. Family pretended nothing happened. My stepfather chuckled under his breath. Someone whispered, "Serve her right for making today about herself." I did not raise my voice. I did not lift my hands. Rage is easy. Restraint is earned. Then the air shifted. Footsteps. Authority moving without hurry because it never needs to rush. Colonel Mason Price stood from his seat near the front. The room slowly registered his presence like a storm, silent before impact. His voice carried across the hall like a drill command softened by respect. Sergeant Holt front and center. Every head turned as I stepped forward. The sting on my cheek burned. My breath settled low and steady. Evan swallowed hard. He knew that tone. Everyone in uniform does. The colonel did not look at Evan first. He looked at me. Then he saluted. Slow, precise, intentional. The kind of salute that carries history and gravity and every silent mile of service someone has walked when no one was watching. A hush dropped like a curtain. Cameras froze. Even the air seemed to hold position. Colonel Price spoke loud enough for every proud whisper and every cowardly smirk to hear. Some earn their place by climbing through hardship. Others think a shiny rank means they have already arrived. His eyes flicked to Evan only once. Respect is not issued. It is proven. In that moment, the humiliation that tried to stain me recoiled and clung to the hands that created it. Evan paled. My mother blinked fast like she could rewrite reality by refusing to see it. A nearby reporter lowered her phone as if shame had weight. I stood silent, not small, not shaken, just present. I had not come to be seen, but I was seen anyway. 0:58. Before the ceremony continued, I felt every gaze shift. Respect does not shout. It arrives. It fills a room without stepping louder. Evan avoided my eyes. His triumph crumbled without a sound. My cheek still burned, but my spirit did not. It rose. My voice finally moved low and even. I do not break. Not for you. Not for anyone like you. He heard it. Fear is quiet when it is real. Have you ever been mocked by family, then watched truth speak for you? Comment, checkmark if you know that feeling. Before the ceremony, before uniforms stitched my spine straight and duty shaped my voice. There was a trailer on a forgotten road outside Fayetteville. Aluminum siding rattled when Carolina storms rolled through. The smell of fried onions and diesel from passing trucks clung to the walls. I remember sticky summers where air conditioning meant opening windows and praying for wind. I remember my mother in scrubs coming home long after the sun quit, shoulders sagging from double shifts at the nursing home. She worked until her fingers cracked. Her shoes wore thin, faster than seasons changed. Her laugh, when she had enough strength for one, came out tired but sincere. She was my first example of service long before I put on a uniform. My stepfather was the opposite. A man who thought raising his voice counted as raising a family. Never laid out flat by war, but always acting like he fought one. He measured power in volume and fists against tables, never in responsibility. He called my mom princess on Monday, then blamed her for bills on Friday. He called me mouthy for asking why he never worked. And when Evan came along, that man wore pride like a badge he never earned. Evan was younger than me by 4 years, but treated like he climbed a mountain by simply waking up every day. My mother never meant to choose sides, but tired women sometimes cling to peace even when peace is poison. So Evan became the golden one. The boy who got new cleats for soccer while I taped holes in my shoes. The boy who got his own room while mine was half storage closet. It started small. Birthdays where his cake had tears and my candle came stuck into the corner of his. Christmas where I got socks and he got game consoles. School nights where I washed dishes while he studied at the kitchen table like royalty doing work. Then comments sharpened as we aged. Evan needs space to focus. Avery is tough. She does not need much. Toughness is not the absence of needs. It is the absence of permission to have them. I learned early to do my own laundry, to pack my own lunches, to walk myself to the bus stop at dawn. My mother would squeeze my hand before rushing to work. "I love you," she whispered. "You are strong. Too strong sometimes." That was her way of apologizing for a world she could not fix. I never hated her. I hated the way life cornered her. Evan, on the other hand, floated. Summer camps, tutors, Boy Scout badges earned mostly by adults doing the work behind the scenes. And when senior year hit, the Holt household became a recruitment office. ROTC brochures stacked on the counter, officers shaking his hand at school events. My stepfather bragging like he had forged Evan in steel instead of cushioning him in softness. College acceptance letter, ROTC scholarship, a future in pressed uniforms and officer clubs. Meanwhile, I graduated with calloused hands from part-time shifts and an acceptance letter to a future no one clapped for. The Army recruiter did not decorate promises. He asked why I wanted to serve. Stability, I answered. Direction, purpose. A path no one can take from me. I signed at 19, enlisted, military police. The night before I shipped out, my stepfather smirked. Security guard in uniform. Try not to embarrass the country. My mother hugged me tight enough to bruise hope into my ribs. Come home when you get tired of playing soldier. Be a real woman. I carried that sentence with me like an extra weight in my ruck. Boot camp hit like humidity in August. Loud, immediate, unforgiving. But yelling never scared me. I grew up with shouting. What challenged me were the quiet moments, the nights when lights cut out and confidence had to survive without noise. First week, I thought about quitting. My arms shook under push-ups. My boots chewed blisters into my heels. My lungs burned like fire drills in humid air. But quitting never tasted right on my tongue. On week 3, we learned salute protocol. My first salute as a soldier was not cinematic. The sun sat ugly sweat pooled under my collar and my hand shook. But when my palm met my brow, pride rose steady like sunrise after a bad storm. No audience, no applause. Just dignity earned grain by grain. That is the difference between privilege and purpose. Privilege arrives wrapped. Purpose arrives earned. After training came assignments. Fort Leonard Wood, then Fort Liberty. Patrols that taught me patience. Domestic calls off post that taught me fear comes in civilian clothes too. Then Kuwait in a sandstorm winter. Guard shifts in the desert where silence felt ancient. Deployment to Poland where the cold cut through gloves and camaraderie warmed what blankets could not. A near IED moment on a convoy route taught me humility. Metal bending, ground vibrating, heart racing yet steady. I learned to breathe slow when others panicked, to steady hands when the world shook. Resilience is not loud. It is repetition. It is getting up when no one saw you fall. Each promotion came not from speeches, but from sweat and paperwork. Years passed. Evan posted photos holding mock rifles in ROTC training fields tagging captions about leadership and legacy. I posted nothing. I lived it. Then in my 5th year, a letter came from my mother. Short, sharp. Since you are older now, maybe it is time to think about coming home to be a real woman. My fist crumpled it, then smoothed it out, then folded it in perfect squares and tucked it inside my journal. Not out of love, out of memory. A compass that pointed toward who I refused to become. I built myself from sweat and silence. Evan floated on expectations. That was the difference. One day he would wear gold bars. I would still wear stripes. But stripes are not steps backward. They are steps walked alone and unassisted. Some people inherit futures. Others carve them inch by stubborn inch. The world calls them the same uniform, but soldiers know the truth. There are those who stand because ceremony demands it, and those who stand because survival taught them how. I knew which one I was long before the colonel lifted his hand in salute. The ceremony only reminded everyone else. The invitation did not come as warmth. It arrived as obligation disguised as family pride. An email pinged on my phone while I sat inside a dusty briefing room at the Fort Liberty training range, sweat drying between my shoulder blades after a 10-hour field exercise. Subject line read, Evans Commissioning. Be there. My mother's words sat sterile in the body of the message. You will attend. Behave. Do not embarrass him. Pride sharpens strange edges. Sometimes it does not lift. Sometimes it presses down on others to feel tall. My thumb hovered over delete. It would be easier to refuse to spend the weekend on post to avoid the familiar sting of being tolerated instead of welcomed. Then another notification. Evan's Instagram. A staged photo of him in a cadet uniform, chin-lifted caption, glowing like the sun, blessed him personally. Future Army leader. 100 likes, heart emoji after heart emoji. Comments praising him. Proud of you, Lieutenant. Meanwhile, I scrolled past my own reflection in the cracked screen. Dusty camo. Sweat-soaked shirt. Boots streaked with dirt. Future Army leader. Some of us lead without photos. My stomach tightened. I set the phone face down on the table. I told myself his ceremony did not matter, that I owed nothing to a family who measured love through convenience and comparison. But duty does not only wear rank. It sometimes lives in the ache to prove wrong, the voices that once silenced you. Later that evening, while I wiped down my patrol boots and hung my gear locker tight, Colonel Price passed through the hallway. He always moved with quiet presence, like noise stepped aside out of respect. I do not know why he noticed the furrow in my brow. Maybe leadership recognizes storms before clouds form. "Something on your mind, Sergeant?" he asked, voice even. I hesitated. "Family ceremony, sir. Not exactly a warm one." He nodded like he had heard that story 1,000 times. "Pride can be loud when truth is quiet. Show up, not for them, for you." He did not advise. He instructed gently the way a compass does not argue north. That settled it. For myself, not them. The night before travel, I pressed my Class A uniform, rolled lint from the dark fabric, polished insignia until I could see clarity in metal. Some soldiers shine boots for inspection. I shined because every reflection of myself was proof I built what they never thought I could. Quiet ritual, steady hands. Purpose measured in inches of thread and crease. I braided my hair tight, packed lightly, no need to impress or convince. My plane left at sunrise. Out the small oval window, Fort Liberty shrank. Pine forests darkened the ground like ink stains. My chest tightened. Pride hurts when shared with those who do not value it. Yet pride burns steady anyway. The Fayetteville airport greeted me with the same faint smell of coffee and memories. I caught a rideshare toward the trailer park where my mother still lived. The driver talked about weather. I nodded. My reflection in the window looked composed. Only my pulse betrayed tension. When the car pulled up, sunlight hit the tin siding like it always did, peeling paint, wind chimes clinking against quiet. My mother opened the door. No arms outstretched, no smile soft enough to erase years. Just a stiff nod. "You made it. Do not start anything." I stepped inside. Same thrift store couch. Same dusty blinds. Same heaviness in the air that felt like swallowed words. My stepfather looked up from the recliner, remote in hand. "So the sergeant returns," he muttered. "You going to salute your kid brother tomorrow?" I kept my jaw relaxed. No reaction is sometimes the loudest answer. Evan and his girlfriend arrived soon after. He wore a polo with his school logo and an arrogance that fit him like tailored fabric. His girlfriend, polished and sharp as glass, wore a silk blouse and a self-satisfied smile. When her eyes swept my uniform bag, she tilted her head. "Do MPs even deploy, or do you just stop teenagers from sneaking off base?" She laughed before I answered. Her voice dripped sweetness that tasted like mockery. Evan grinned. "Do not mind her, Avery. She just thinks real soldiers go infantry." He paused. "But hey, someone has to guard the gates." My spine straightened. MPs do deploy. MPs run convoys and patrols and investigations. But I did not recite my resume. People who respect truth do not need convincing. People who do not believe truth will not believe you anyway. My mother busied herself pretending nothing stung. My stepfather turned up the TV. The living room felt smaller than memory. Then my eyes landed on the mantel, on a wooden flag case, the kind folded once for honor, forever for memory. My biological father's flag, a man whose name I barely whispered as a child. A soldier who served before I knew what service meant. My mother never spoke much about him, only that he had worn a uniform and died young. The flag did not brag. It rested with dignity. My chest warmed, not like fire, like a pilot light catching after being starved too long. Evan kept talking. Something about how officer housing would be better than barracks, how people would finally treat him with respect, how he could not wait to command soldiers. I listened without reacting. His voice floated like helium inflated on expectation and praise. Mine stayed grounded. Earned. I excused myself to the hallway, lifted the flag case, ran my fingers over the wood, saw my reflection in the glass. Not a child anymore. Not the girl overlooked at the kitchen table while the golden boy received praise. Soldier. Leader. Steady hands. Evan wanted rank. I wanted purpose. One of those things stands even when applause fades. Tomorrow would not just be a ceremony. It would be a confrontation between what was handed and what was earned. And I did not go home to remember pain. I went home to face it. Sometimes a battlefield is not dirt and wire. It is linoleum floors and childhood walls and voices that once convinced you to shrink. As I placed the flag back gently, I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, not desperation, just clarity. I would show up. I would stand straight. I would not bow to history or doubt. I would let truth speak the way it always does eventually. Quiet first. Then undeniable. The morning of the commissioning ceremony smelled like polished brass-pressed dress uniforms and pride so thick it clung to the air. Fayetteville University ROTC Hall gleamed under spring sunlight, banners of red, white, and blue, draped across tall windows. Cadets in full dress moved like they were already saluting history. I walked in alone, my Class A crisp shoes like mirrors, ribbons earned, not gifted. The foyer buzzed with families snapping photos, mothers dabbing happy tears, fathers shaking hands like they had all personally forged their sons into officers. My mother stood near the first row. When she spotted me, her lips tightened before shaping the expected greeting. "You're late, Avery." I wasn't. I was exactly on time. My stepfather didn't look up from straightening Evan's shoulder boards. Evan wore that same polished arrogance from childhood, but now it came pinned with rank. Second Lieutenant Holt, the kind of title that changes nothing about character, only amplifies what's already there. He smirked when he saw me. Well, well, you actually showed. I looked straight ahead. Duty first, emotion last. The ceremony began. Cadets marched, colors posted. National anthem filled the hall. My spine aligned with the music like memory guided it. Discipline is not posture. It is identity. Then came speeches. Commanders praised sacrifice and future leadership. Proud parents leaned forward, eyes glossy. My family didn't look at me, only at him. Finally, Evan stepped up to the podium, microphone gleaming, uniform immaculate, confidence overflowing. He paused dramatically, scanning the room like a general already addressing battalions. "Thank you for being here to celebrate leadership and service," he began. Leadership. Service. Words he hadn't yet earned. He continued with a rehearsed smile. "Some serve on the front lines. Some serve by defending the nation's interests abroad." His tone shifted, a cold edge forming. "And some enforce parking rules on base and call it service." Laughter rippled across the hall. Light, polite, but sharp. A few officers stiffened. They understood what he'd just done. My jaw didn't move. My shoulders stayed steady. Inside, a pulse of heat rose, but discipline held it in place. Calm is not weakness. Self-control is not surrender. Evan continued louder now because cruelty emboldens itself when unchallenged. "Not everyone rises to leadership," he said. "Some stay where they start. Some ceilings are just lower." He did not look at me, but he might as well have pointed. I stared forward. If you flinch, they win. If you fold, they define you. If you stand still, truth waits its turn. Ceremony commands silence, but disrespect breaks tradition before dignity ever does. After the commissioning oath, ROTC staff invited families forward to pin ranks, a symbolic passing of legacy. My mother proudly pinned Evan's bars with shaking hands like she was touching destiny. He grinned wide, basking in applause. A camera flash lit his profile like a hero poster. Then he turned to me. The applauding softened, his eyes locked onto mine. "Come take a picture with your superior officer," he said, quietly, mocking sweetness dripping like syrup over rusted metal. I didn't move. Military bearing means knowing when stillness protects you. His smile faltered. He stepped closer, mask cracking. "When I say, 'Move, Sergeant,' you move." That voice, that tone, wrong rank to give that order, wrong audience to give it in front of, wrong soldier to try it on. His hand shot forward, grabbing my upper arm, fingers digging hard through fabric. A squeeze designed not to guide, but to dominate. I didn't react. I didn't retreat. His frustration flared. "You listen when an officer speaks." Then the second blow came. Not theatrical, not loud, a sharp palm against my cheekbone. Quick, hidden between bodies, a bully's strike. Instantly, silent pain flashed through my vision. My pulse roared in my ears. The room didn't see the strike clearly, but they felt the shift. Heads turned. A murmur. My breath caught not from hurt, but from memory, childhood kitchen. Same grip, same tone, same violence wearing a family name. I lifted my eyes to him. Calm, unbroken. "I will not move, sir." That stopped him. Everyone heard that, sir. Every syllable honed, steel-wrapped, controlled. For a heartbeat, air froze. Then he whispered, bitterly desperate to regain power. "Parking lot soldier." My fists curled, knuckles tight inside polished gloves. Rage begged to break out like a dam cracking, but I stayed still. Stayed. Stillness is sometimes louder than impact. That's when it happened. A chair slid back. Sharp. Commanding. Colonel Mason Price stood. His dress blues carried weight beyond fabric ribbons and insignia glinting with history. Conversations died mid-breath. He walked toward me. Step by deliberate step. The hall hushed like a storm paused overhead. Evan's smirk wilted. Colonel Price stopped beside me, turned to face Evan. And then the room gasped as he brought his hand sharply to his brow in a perfect, crisp salute. But not to the lieutenant. To me. To the enlisted soldier he'd seen serve. To the sergeant who earned every stripe. Sergeant Holt, he said, voice deep and steady, presenting respect that echoed like thunder in silence. "Thank you for your service and your discipline today." The world stopped. My lungs forgot how to breathe. Evan's face blanched, shock strangling arrogance mid-air. Colonel Price shifted his gaze across the room. "Leadership is not given by rank," he announced. "It is proven by conduct." A hush fell so thick it felt like gravity itself pressed down on every seat. Cameras lifted. Whispers sparked. Someone recorded. Evan's mouth opened. No words came out. Suddenly, those shiny rank bars didn't look like power. They looked like borrowed armor. Paper armor. Fragile. Colonel Price lowered his salute and turned away from Evan as if the air around him wasn't worth standing in. For the first time all morning, I felt seen. Not as a forgotten daughter, not as a shadow in uniform, but as a soldier whose steadiness held louder than cruelty. Evan stepped back, throat tight, eyes darting. The laughter from earlier was gone. In its place, silence thick enough to choke arrogance. One truth settled heavy through the hall. Rank does not equal respect. Character does. And in that moment, mine outranked his, even if the world had taken years to notice. That night, I did not cry. I did not tremble. I did not replay the moment looking for courage I failed to use. I had used courage, the quiet kind, the kind forged in barracks lights clicking off and early morning runs on frostbitten pavement, the kind they never see coming until it's already in motion. I sat alone in my rented room in Fayetteville, my Class A still hanging near the window. A faint bruise bloomed high on my cheekbone. Not dramatic, not tragic, just undeniable. Proof, not of weakness but of truth. I opened my government laptop, logged into secure access, and began writing my sworn statement. Date, time, location, incident, witness potential. I included no emotion, no anger, no metaphors. Military truth is not spoken. It is documented. I filed the report through the military chain of command, noting that a commissioned officer laid hands on an enlisted NCO during a formal event. I attached nothing extra, not yet. You do not throw every card. You stack them, quietly, carefully. Then I scheduled a JAG consult, and only then did I loosen my jaw enough to exhale. The next morning, my family invited me to breakfast, a gesture that was less invitation and more containment. A reunion performed like theater. I went, not because I wanted peace, but because I wanted clarity. The diner hummed with weekend chatterforks, clinking the smell of bacon and syrup, masking sour truths. My mother looked up as I approached, her eyes narrowing at the faint discoloration on my cheek. "What happened to your face?" she asked, like she hadn't watched it form. I sat across from them, Stepdad sipping coffee like he earned it. Evan scrolling his phone jaw tight, ego cracked but not yet shattered. His girlfriend pretending to be polite, her smile sugar-coated and hollow. I answered evenly. "Your son struck me yesterday." Silence. Then a scoff. My mother stirred her tea like it held excuses. Evan didn't lay a hand on you. You must have bumped into something. Gaslighting isn't always violent. Sometimes it's just polished and practiced." Evan finally looked up. His voice carried the arrogance of someone who always had adults rewrite his sins. "You're being dramatic, Avery. I didn't touch you." My jaw tightened. I looked at him. "You grabbed my arm. You struck me." His lip curled. "You're a sergeant, not porcelain. Grow up." My stepfather added calmly, as if moderating a debate. He didn't mean anything by it. It was just sibling roughness. Sibling roughness does not leave a mark, but arguing would hand them what they wanted. Emotion. I offered none. I stood. "I will be following the appropriate process." My mother's voice lifted low but sharp. "So you're going to destroy his career over nothing. That word? Nothing. It always meant my pain, my truth, my existence." I turned to Evan. "You put your hand on a subordinate. That is not nothing." He swallowed. For the first time since childhood, he looked unsure. "Good. I left them there mid-performance, their storyline collapsing without my participation." Back at post-access gate, I presented my ID, drove onto Fort Liberty like I was stepping into shielded ground. I went straight to the JAG office. Captain Lewis greeted me with the calm professionalism of someone who has seen quiet battles and knows their weight. "Sergeant Holt, come in." I sat handed over my documentation and recited facts once more. No embellishment, no tears. He reviewed the report, nodding slowly. "This is clean," he said. "This will move forward." Evan, meanwhile, submitted his own statement of fiction written in a tone that assumed credibility belonged to him by birthright. He claimed I instigated that he touched my arm lightly to get my attention and absolutely did not strike me. His arrogance was a blueprint, entitlement as strategy. But I had learned long ago something he had not. Arrogance does not hold up under investigation. Evidence does, and I had it. I went back through old text messages, saved voicemails. The ones from my mother saying real daughters don't play soldier. The one from my stepfather calling me a uniformed babysitter. The one from Evan muttering that real service starts at officer ranks. I forwarded relevant ones to JAG, then pulled up email archives. 3 times in 2 years, my family contacted units or family readiness groups with concerns about my behavior or emotional fitness. Thinly veiled attempts to plant doubt in my record. I had ignored them then. Not anymore. Every slight becomes evidence when truth is required to defend dignity. Colonel Price requested a private meeting. I met him in his office on post, his walls lined with unit plaques and quiet authority. He didn't sit behind his desk. He stood. That alone told me where the power was in this room. "I heard you reported it, Sergeant." "Yes, sir." "Good." His voice was steady and heavy. "We will do this clean." A flicker of something pride or reassurance passed through me. Discipline wasn't just my weapon. It was my shield. I nodded. "Understood, sir." He studied me a moment, then spoke softer. "He struck the wrong soldier." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Truth had momentum now. Back at my barracks office, I sat taking inventory of every call, every slight, every bruise life handed me just because I refused to stay small. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. My mother's hiss spilled through the line. "What are you doing?" "Drop this. You will ruin him." Not once in her tone was concern for my bruised face. Only fear for his reputation. Typical. I spoke carefully. "I am following procedure. You think the Army will take your side? You're just enlisted." That word cracked through me, not as insult, but as revelation. They truly believed rank defined value. They never understood service. I ended the call, then powered off my phone. You cannot manipulate someone who no longer takes your calls. That night in the barracks quiet, I typed one simple sentence in my notes app. He thinks rank protects him, but rank does not outrank truth. The building hummed with fluorescent quiet. The world slept. I stayed awake not from fear, but from readiness. When soldiers prepare for battle, we do not scream into mirrors. We organize our gear. My gear was paperwork, evidence, discipline. Morning came, and with it acknowledgement from JAG, formal inquiry authorized. I exhaled once, controlled. A release not of relief, but of confirmation. They had underestimated me, not because I was weak, but because I was quiet. Quiet is not surrender. Quiet is preparation. And they were about to learn the difference. Ever fought back quietly and won later. Comment justice. Investigations in the Army do not start with noise. They start with paperwork. Quiet, clinical, emotionless. They do not care about tears or tone. They care about timeline testimony documentation. I showed up to the appointed office in ACU's hair, tight boots, clean, bearing sharper than my jawline under fluorescent light. When the IG officer slid forms across the desk, I signed without hesitation. My voice was steady, my words precise, my pulse calm, like I had been training for this moment long before I knew it would arrive. Evan had spent his life believing rules bent for him. I had spent mine learning they bend for no one, not when the right people are watching. And they were now. The investigating officer asked me to recount the events. I stated only facts, no adjectives. He then leaned back and asked if there had been prior issues. That was the moment I realized just how long my silence had been their shield. I nodded. Yes, sir, there has been a consistent pattern of verbal belittlement and professional disrespect by 2LT Holt and members of my family. He took notes, brows narrowing slightly. A pattern changes everything. It turns an incident into a case. From there, the IG pulled Evan's commissioning packet. A simple administrative step. But admin has toppled more arrogant men than battles have. He lied on his background forms. He claimed no history of disciplinary issues in ROTC. Claimed no family tensions that could interfere with duty. Claimed he had never been accused of hazing. That one hit a nerve. I hadn't known about hazing. But the IG dug. It took less than 48 hours for 2 ROTC cadets to anonymously confirm past misconduct. Evan had run so-called initiation drills that bordered on harassment, forced freshmen to do PT in freezing rain while he laughed, mocked one for stuttering. ROTC had brushed it under the rug to protect statistics. But buried misconduct does not disappear. It waits. And truth always waits for the right witness. As for nepotism, it surfaced too. A family friend had written a glowing letter that sounded more like a personal favor than observation. The IG flagged it. Evan's file, once polished, now had fingerprints of entitlement all over it. Meanwhile, I pulled threads from my side. I remembered something from years ago pushed down like dust settling under heavy footsteps. A night when my mother screamed at me for calling the police after my stepfather shoved me into a cabinet. I had thought nothing came of it. No one helped. No officer followed up, but memories resurfaced with precision when survival required it. I requested a record search from Cumberland County Sheriff's Office. There it was, a report from a decade ago, filed by a 19-year-old girl with shaking hands, documented by a deputy whose shift was nearly over. A domestic disturbance call naming my stepfather, listing physical contact, listing me as the victim. The case never advanced, but the record existed. Proof that my pain had existed long before Evan ever wore a uniform he believed made him untouchable. I stared at the scanned PDF. Once reading my name on such a document would have broken me. Now it steadied me. My suffering had not been imagined. It had been ignored. Different thing. Very different. My family, sensing danger, shifted tactics. My mother called Colonel Price's office pretending to be concerned, pretending to be supportive. She told his secretary she worried I was having an emotional breakdown. She said stress from deployments made me unstable. Those words were cold bullets disguised as concern. The secretary documented it. When called for clarification by a JAG officer, my mother doubled down. She said I had always been jealous, that I hated seeing Evan succeed, that I snapped at the ceremony, that I had a history of overreaction. She spoke calmly, like she was reading from a script she practiced her whole life. Jealous, overreacting, unstable. I almost admired the consistency of her narrative. Except this time it wasn't destroying me. It was building them a grave. Evan, cornered by procedure, tried a different method. He called me one evening. I didn't answer. He texted, "Answer your phone." I didn't. He showed up at the gym on post. That was his mistake. He approached me near the squat racks, eyes dark with panic, jaw clenched with entitlement, collapsing under fear. You need to withdraw the complaint, he hissed. His voice wavered, but his ego tried to stand tall. This will follow me. This will ruin everything. My hands rested on the barbell. My heart rate didn't change. I kept my posture steady. That is not my concern, sir. He bristled at the sir. He leaned closer. You think you're better than me because you've been playing soldier longer, newsflash. Officers run the army. Sergeants just carry things. He didn't see the security camera blinking red just above his shoulder, didn't notice the senior NCO across the room watching eyes narrowing at his tone. Instead, he leaned close enough for his whisper to spit resentment. This is your last chance. Drop it, or I make sure no one ever takes you seriously again. I looked at him calm, unmoved, almost pitying. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I just pressed the quiet truth that terrifies men like him. You already tried that, and you failed. He froze. Words turned to gravel in his throat. Then he stormed out, slamming the exit door like an angry boy denied a toy. The senior NCO approached me. You good, Sergeant Holt? Yes, First Sergeant. He nodded once, then looked at the camera. He knew. He would report it. Evan had just handed the investigation another nail for his own coffin. The IG officer called me in days later. His expression was different now, the way military leaders look when they realize the quiet soldier in the room isn't fragile but forged. Sergeant Holt, we've opened a full Inspector General case. There are indications of misconduct and integrity issues on his side. This will escalate to command review. I nodded. Thank you, sir. He continued. There are also indications of attempted character sabotage against you. The system moves slowly, but it moves. I did not smile. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't joy. It was recognition. Recognition that discipline, patience, and truth were not passive. They were weapons. My mother texted again. You are destroying this family. The irony tasted metallic. They had destroyed me long before this process ever started. Evan sent one final message. Just remember you asked for this. He still didn't understand. I did not ask. I documented. And in the military documentation outranks ego every single time. The IG file thickened. Statements, screenshots, voicemails, ROTC testimony, gym footage. That domestic report from years ago, like a ghost stepping forward to say, I saw everything and I did not forget. The silence around me wasn't lonely. It was powerful. It meant I didn't need to shout for justice. It was already walking toward me. And for the first time in years, I slept without clenching my jaw. Ever fought back quietly and won later? Comment justice. Retaliation arrives dressed as concern. It always does. The first call came the morning after the IG officially elevated the case. My phone buzzed with my mother's name. I answered because silence does not always protect you. Sometimes you pick up to witness who they choose to be when truth corners them. Her voice came sharp, strained brittle around the edges like porcelain about to crack. You are a disgrace, Avery. Do you know what you've done? I stared out my barracks window, watching soldiers run drills across the field, breath visible in cool Carolina morning air. I have followed protocol, ma'am, I answered calmly. She spit the word back like I had insulted her. Protocol, no shame, no apology. You should have dropped this. You humiliated your brother. Your father would be horrified. My father would have respected service. I said, my voice steady as a parade rest stance. You should try it sometime. The line went dead. The next knock came 3 hours later at the on-post parking lot. My stepfather leaned against a truck, arms crossed like a man rehearsing intimidation in the mirror since high school. He intercepted me with a swagger far too large for his accomplishments. We need to talk. I kept walking until we were clear of foot traffic. He stepped closer. You think you can just go around ruining lives because you're bitter. You didn't make officer. I did not answer. Silence strips bullies of oxygen. He tried again, louder. You're jealous. That boy is going places and you're just a glorified mall cop in a uniform. I met his eyes. I am a military police NCO serving active duty. A pause. Controlled. You are a retiree yelling in a parking lot. His face reddened and he jabbed a finger toward me. You drop this complaint or I sue you for defamation. There it was, the threat they always lean on when emotional manipulation fails. Lawsuit, reputation, shame. My voice did not shake. Sir, service members cannot be sued for statements made in formal military investigations under federal immunity. He blinked. He didn't know that. He wasn't prepared to fight someone who did their homework. I kept walking. His voice chased me hollow now. You think this makes you strong. It makes you pathetic. I didn't turn around. When the weak scream, it is only to drown out the sound of their own crumbling. That afternoon, Evan tried his move. He confronted me near the battalion HQ walkway where junior soldiers passed by with clipboards and urgency in their steps. He squared his shoulders, wearing his bars like a shield. You think filing complaints makes you powerful, Sergeant? His tone held an officer's arrogance, but not an officer's discipline. I raised my chin slightly. I think accountability makes the Army stronger, sir. He scoffed. You're nothing but enlisted muscle. I'm leadership. His voice rose just enough that two privates froze mid-step, pretending not to listen. I locked eyes with him. Leadership is earned. Your bars are not armor, sir. He stepped closer, trying to loom, but officers who threaten NCOs never loom. They shrink. You're going to regret this, he hissed. I answered as if reciting regulation. Intimidation of a complaint witness is misconduct punishable under Article 92. His face cracked. He hadn't read that chapter, or any chapter that did not praise him. He turned sharply and walked away before anyone saw the tremor in his jaw. He tried power. Truth broke it. Word of his attempted confrontation spread in the quiet way barracks rumors do. No one gossiped loudly. Soldiers do not feast on scandal, they study it, and they were studying him. Colonel Price summoned me. His office smelled like leather dust and decades of duty etched into the walls. He stood behind his desk, hands clasped behind his back posture like carved steel. Holt. Yes, sir. He studied me for a moment. They think rank protects the weak. It doesn't. His voice carried a gravity that made rooms stand straighter. Rank protects the mission. Character protects the uniform. He nodded once. Continue doing exactly what you're doing. I saluted. He returned it. Not because of rank, but because of respect. Respect outranks authority every time. My family, sensing their narrative slipping, escalated. A cousin I had not heard from in years suddenly checked in with feigned warmth. Just wanted to see how you're holding up. Subtext, tell me what ammo to use against you. I replied with silence. Then the digital attacks began. An anonymous Facebook post appeared in a local Fayetteville group insinuating I had anger issues, citing my troubled service history. Attempt at character assassination. Pathetic. They tried emailing a blogger that covered military family gossip. The blogger emailed me for comment. I replied with official documentation and a line I serve with duty. I do not engage in rumor. They tried leaking a claim that I had discipline marks in my service record. It failed because my record is clean. Clean, not because my life was easy, but because every time life tried to break me, I stood and saluted discipline instead of despair. And then came the attempt I knew eventually would appear. Someone emailed a local newspaper reporter claiming I fabricated abuse for sympathy. But the reporter had military family. She contacted PAO on base instead of printing it. PAO contacted my command. My command contacted JAG. The writer of the email has been redacted for legal privacy, but the IG hinted it originated inside my family circle. They thought character assassination was a strategy. It was a confession. Meanwhile, the Military Times local affiliate began sniffing around. A subtle inquiry anonymous officer accused of misconduct at commissioning event Army investigating. No names, just suggestion. But suggestion is oxygen for public accountability. When power sees press light flicker near its shadow, it shifts. Another ripple. Another crack in Evan's shield of privilege. My mother called again, voice brittle and furious. You are doing this to hurt us. I answered calmly. I am doing this to protect myself and my profession. She snapped. Who do you think you are? The truth. She hung up. My stepfather texted next. You are dead to this family. I stared at the message for a moment. then turned my phone face down and returned to work. Dead to a family that tried to kill my worth is not a loss. It is liberation. Days passed and investigation threads tightened. Evan tried avoiding me now, not because he respected me, but because weak men fear the mirror of their own consequences. Rumors whispered through officer halls. Some subtle nods from senior leaders I passed, not sympathy but recognition. A sergeant standing up properly. A lieutenant failing the standard. The Army notices that. Always. I kept my uniform pressed, my salute crisp, my voice steady. Truth does not need volume. It needs consistency. I ran PT every morning like I had always run head-high, breath, sharp feet, hitting ground like punctuation marks on a statement I hadn't finished writing. I knew retaliation was only phase 1. What came next would not be theirs to decide. It would be the Army's. And unlike them, the Army does not care about family pride. It cares about integrity. Quiet fights are not weak. They are strategic. And I was not fighting a boy. I was fighting entitlement, legacy, arrogance, and generational silence. And I was winning because they were loud. And I was right because they panicked and I prepared, because they clung to rank and I clung to truth. And truth is the only rank that never gets demoted. In the Army, you learn quickly that real loyalty is not loud. It walks beside you in silence, shows up without asking permission, and stands watch when the shadows grow long. After the family's noise faded into bitter echoes, the quiet allies began to step into the light. It started in the MP motor pool, the place where dust and grease cling to everything, even rank and pride. Corporal Diaz approached me first. He was young and sharp, the kind of soldier who saluted even when no one watched. I heard Sergeant, he said, eyes steady, voice respectful, not nosy. If you need witness statements, I'll sign whatever is accurate. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. In the Army, a calm offer is worth more than 1,000 cheering crowds. I gave him a nod. Thank you, Corporal. Then Specialist Reed, the same soldier who once stood guard with me through a night so cold, water bottles froze. Solid walked up during weapons cleaning. Sergeant Holt, ma'am, he started, awkward but sincere. If they try to spin it like you were out of line, I'll swear under oath you weren't. We've all seen you hold standard when lesser leaders broke it. His voice cracked slightly at the end. Not because he was afraid, but because loyalty wears no armor. It is raw. It is earned. Word moved quietly through the MP company. No dramatic speeches, no hashtags, just soldiers stepping forward one by one with nods with, I got you, Sarge, with the kind of solidarity that could only come from training fields, midnight patrols, and shared rations during field exercises when exhaustion blurred into trust. Then came the emails, one from Kuwait, another from Poland. Soldiers I deployed with people who had seen me in the worst heat and the darkest cold, who watched me lace tourniquets, negotiate local tensions, and escort convoys through uncertainty. They sent sworn statements willingly. Avery Holt never lost her bearing, even when rockets hit near the wire, one wrote. She is exactly what a leader should be, another said. They did not mention the slap. They didn't need to. Character wasn't proven by an incident. It was proven by a record carved across continents. As momentum shifted, one voice arrived like a battalion marching in. Retired Sergeant Major Douglas Grant, a man whose uniform weighed heavy with decades and whose handshake alone could command attention, requested to speak with JAG. When they asked why, his answer traveled through channels faster than rumor. I watched Holt lead soldiers under pressure that would break many officers. She carries herself with discipline. The lieutenant in this situation has not earned the right to question her integrity. A retired sergeant major speaking is like the Army's conscience clearing its throat, and people listen. Meanwhile, in Fayetteville, word drifted quietly through salons and barber shops. Military towns have their own networks more accurate than intelligence briefings and twice as fast. At a hair salon off Skibo Road, someone said they heard a new lieutenant slapped his sister who is an MP. Another replied they heard she stood still like a wall and a colonel saluted her in front of everyone. Truth grows legs when dignity carries it. Soon it wasn't scandal. It was legend. The kind whispered by spouses over coffee and by vets playing dominoes outside the VFW hall. A woman in uniform stood against family and arrogance and did not bow. That story travels. It finds hearts ready to believe in discipline again. Back at JAG, the tone shifted. Captain Lewis greeted me with a crisp nod. Sergeant Holt, update for you. I sat. He folded his hands. Based on corroborated behavior, prior hazing reports, intimidation attempts, and witness accounts, we are approving. Article 133 charges for conduct unbecoming an officer. Article 133. The phrase held weight like boots hitting parade floor. It was not revenge. It was accountability. And accountability in the Army is sacred. My breath stayed calm, but my pulse acknowledged the gravity. What does this mean for him, sir? He exhaled. If sustained, potentially loss of rank, removal from duty, and administrative separation. I nodded. Understood. I walked out, not triumphant, but steady. Justice is not fireworks. It is slow, meticulous correction of imbalance. The next ripple came subtly. The battalion chaplain stopped me as I exited. Holt, he said, his voice low. I've seen soldiers stand tall, but not many stand as still as you did that day. You did not disgrace the uniform. You defended it. I thanked him. Not because I needed validation, but because truth spoken by a witness feels like a salve on an old wound. Later that week, as I returned from PT, a quiet knock hit my barracks door. I opened it to find Sergeant First Class Bennett, one of the toughest NCOs on post, built like he was carved from oak and twice as unbreakable. He didn't waste breath. I served under leaders who would have crumbled under what you faced. You did not. Good soldiers do not let bullies wear bars. We hold the line. Then he extended something small, a challenge coin etched with the MP crest. Not ceremonial, personal. There are moments in service when honor is not given by ceremony but by hand, by those who served long enough to know real strength when they see it. That coin sat heavy in my palm like an oath. The following Friday, I went to get a haircut off post. The barber paused halfway through trimming my collar line and asked softly, "You're that MP, right? The one who stood there and let rank trip over itself trying to hurt you?" I didn't move, didn't confirm, didn't deny. He nodded to himself. Folks here respect quiet strength. Don't let them tell you different. Later in line at the commissary, an older woman, retired Air Force spouse judging by her ID, tapped my elbow lightly. Everyone's talking about the girl who didn't flinch. I hope it's you. I blinked once. Yes, ma'am. She smiled like she had been waiting years for someone to prove the world could still do the right thing. My phone buzzed. A deployment buddy sent a message. Proud of you. You stood in front of rockets once. Standing in front of arrogance is easier. I didn't reply right away. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because pride sits differently when earned quietly. There is no parade, just breath. Stillness, strength. When I returned to post, I saw Colonel Price entering HQ. He caught my eye, paused, and offered a nod. Not formal, not required. Respect to respect. He stepped close enough that only I could hear. The Army thrives when the right people stand firm. Keep standing, Holt. I saluted. He returned it. Every salute exchanged in this journey meant something. Not ceremony. Recognition. Meanwhile, Evan grew quieter. He no longer strutted across post like he owned it. He avoided crowds. He avoided eye contact. He avoided mirrors. Weak men cannot face their own reflection. And then, the first whisper of formal board proceedings reached the bulletin. Quiet notice. No names. But everyone reads between lines. Officers conduct review. When I passed the admin clerk, she gave a small nod. Not gossip. Solidarity. I did not celebrate. I did not gloat. I simply breathed deeper. There is air on the other side of silence, and I had earned every breath. I walked past the parade field just as recruits practiced facing movements. Their cadence echoed across morning light. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. Forward march is always the same command. You move, not backward, not aside. Forward. Honor does not rush. It doesn't roar. It marches. And in that moment, surrounded by uniform dust cadence and truth, I realized something. I had not been alone. I had simply been the first to stand. Army justice does not arrive in a roar. It arrives in a room where truth sits on folding chairs and silence weighs more than stripes. The Board of Inquiry convened inside a government building on post-fluorescent lights, humming chairs aligned in perfect rows like soldiers at attention. The air smelled like starch paper and nerves. No courtroom theatrics, just a table, a flag rank insignias glinting under flat lighting, and 7 officers assigned to judge conduct. Article 15 and BOI combined because the allegations had climbed beyond administrative slap on the wrist. They wanted clarity. They wanted truth. Uniform pressed, boots shined, bearing immovable. I walked in alone, not because I lacked allies, but because soldiers walk into battle under their own name. My stripes felt heavier that day, not as burden, but as armor earned. Across the room, Evan sat stiff, his dress blues too crisp, too new, as if they hadn't yet grown accustomed to accountability. His jaw worked nervously. His mother sat behind him, pearl earrings trembling, clutching tissues she had bought before she ever shed a tear. My stepfather beside her arms crossed eyes full of resentment instead of remorse. Public seating held retirees, senior NCOs, junior troops invited as witnesses or observers, and a few members of the Fayetteville community. The whispers had brought them here, not to see drama, but to see closure. A clerk called the hearing to order. Phones silenced, camcorders banned. Only eyes, memory, and a stenographer recording every breath that mattered. The presiding colonel cleared his throat. This board will examine conduct unbecoming, an officer assault on a non-commissioned officer, attempted witness, intimidation, dishonesty during commissioning review, and potential character sabotage of a fellow service member. The room sat still, air paused, rank meaningless against truth laid on the table like a scalpel. They called Evan first. He stood shakily, his salute sloppy not from lack of knowledge, but from fear eroding posture. "Lieutenant Holt, please state your recollection." He launched into his manufactured narrative. "I never struck her." I placed my hand gently to guide her. She misinterpreted. "I respect the NCO Corps. I've always respected her." His voice cracked on always. He sounded like a child handing excuses to adults who already knew the truth. The panel stared without warmth. "Officers know when confidence is genuine and when it hides cowardice." The lead colonel asked flatly, "Did you put your hand on Sergeant Holt in a manner not appropriate for an officer?" Evan swallowed. "I redirected her." "Did you strike her?" "No, sir." Shame trembled through his voice like static. The colonel's eyebrow lifted barely, but enough to cut. "We have witness statements." Evan blinked fast. "They're lying." The room froze. "Officers do not accuse sworn NCOs of lying without evidence." One panel member leaned forward. "Are you suggesting enlisted personnel coordinated false statements against you?" Evan's shoulders twitched. "I'm saying—" He didn't finish, because they cut him off. "Sit down, Lieutenant." His mother gasped softly like she believed decorum could save him. It could not. They called me next. My shoes absorbed the weight of the world as I walked forward. Not heavy, purposeful. I raised my right hand, swore truth, then sat. Sergeant Holt recount the incident. My voice remained still, not cold, just disciplined. On the day of Lieutenant Holt's commissioning ceremony, he made derogatory comments about enlisted service implying lack of value. When I did not react, he approached, grabbed my upper arm with force, and struck me with an open hand. He also attempted to use rank to coerce compliance. I did not respond physically. I maintained military bearing. I spoke as if reading instruction manual. No venom, no exaggeration. Because truth does not need theatrics. Evan shifted in his seat like the chair suddenly burned. The presiding officer asked, "And how did you respond after the incident?" "I followed Army reporting procedures, sir. Filed sworn statement. Consulted JAG." "Did you threaten Lieutenant Holt?" "No, sir." "Did you attempt career harm outside regulation?" "No, sir." "Did you attempt public embarrassment?" "No, sir." His mother suddenly blurted from the back. She wanted to destroy him. Gasps. The presiding colonel slammed the gavel hard. "Ma'am, you will remain silent or be removed." She sank back, crushed by decorum she thought she could outrun. They continued. "Did you ever physically retaliate?" "No, sir." My voice never wavered. Not once. Strength is not loud. It breathes steady. Then witnesses came. Corporal Diaz, spine straight, voice even. I overheard disrespect from Lieutenant Holt. saw his behavior. Sergeant Holt maintained discipline. Specialist Reed followed. Deployment record. Discipline under stress. Never saw her lose bearing. Not once. Then came the retired sergeant major. He approached the stand with a gait that carried wars across continents. When he spoke, the room leaned forward like history itself entered. I served 30 years. I saw leaders rise and dissolve. Character is the test, not rank. He turned slightly toward the board. The sergeant you are evaluating exemplified Army values under adversity. The lieutenant demonstrated conduct I would have corrected in a private. Discipline is not given. It is earned. Silence stretched thick. It wasn't applause. It was reverence. Finally, they called Colonel Price. When he entered the room, shifted like gravity had bowed to duty. He saluted the board, then spoke without theatrics. I witnessed conduct that violated Army standards. Lieutenant Holt attempted to demean an NCO based on rank. Physical contact followed. When I observed Sergeant Holt stand in stillness instead of force, she displayed discipline expected of leaders. Someone asked him, "Colonel, why did you publicly salute Sergeant Holt?" He answered simply, "To remind everyone present that rank does not equal character. Character earns respect, not shoulder boards." A murmur rippled like wind through formation. My stepfather stood abruptly playing broken parent for the room. She's ruining him. She has always tried to overshadow him. He burst into fake tears so unconvincing that a veteran in the back scoffed loudly. Security gently advised him to sit. My mother dabbed her eyes with tissue corners like a church actress auditioning for sympathy. The board did not flinch. Sympathy does not outrank evidence. They reviewed documents, the domestic call from my youth, the emails, the IG findings, ROTC hazing accounts, gym footage, witness testimony. Documentation beat emotion. It always does when discipline meets daylight. Evan was asked one final question. "Lieutenant Holt, do you believe your actions reflect Army leadership?" He froze. Sweat beaded at his temple. He looked at his parents, searching for rescue that could not enter this room. He whispered, "I made a mistake." Too late. The panel recessed to deliberate. The room buzzed with breath held in collective ribs. Soldiers don't gossip in moments like this. They wait. They honor the process. 35 minutes later, they returned, faces unreadable. The presiding colonel spoke. "Lieutenant Evan Holt, we find sufficient evidence of conduct unbecoming of an officer, failure to uphold Army values, misuse of rank, and dishonesty in official matters." Evan's face drained white like snow melting off stone. Recommendation removal from duty. Revocation of rank and separation from service. His mother sobbed loud now, not for morality, but for pride shattered. His stepfather cursed under breath. Evan sat hollow bars heavy on shoulders, soon to be stripped away. A few veterans in the back nodded once. Not gloating, just acknowledgement. Dignity secured, justice served. They rose. File out quietly. The board collected their papers. No applause. Just a moment where several older soldiers met my eyes and gave the smallest, most respectful nods. The kind that is earned only by those who stood when they could have screamed. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I stood, adjusted my jacket, saluted the panel. They returned the salute. When I turned to leave, the door opened wide, sunlight cutting across the floor in a clean line. My boots crossed it without hurry. Dignity doesn't rush. Outside, cool air brushed my skin. Spring breeze off the Carolina pines, soft but steady. A group of enlisted soldiers waited quietly nearby. One offered a slight chin lift. Respect, not for victory, for how it was won. I walked forward with my shoulders level steps, even heart unshaken. I didn't look back at the building, the board, or the family that sat crumbling inside. Some victories are not loud celebrations. They are quiet exits. And sometimes the most powerful sound in the world is your own footsteps leaving a place where you were underestimated and never once losing your bearing. The earth did not shake after the board ruling. The world did not erupt in applause. That is not how real justice lands. It settles like dust after a long march, soft and undeniable. But the fallout came anyway, not as fire, but as cold air. It started in whispers around Fayetteville in church parking lots and grocery store aisles where military wives traded truth faster than coupons. The Holt family, once smug with pride, now walked small under fluorescent lights and Sunday sun. Neighbors who once waved with forced smiles now crossed the street. Veterans outside the VFW hall stopped nodding at my stepfather. One retired Marine said loudly enough for him to hear, "Anyone who raises a boy to think rank is a weapon don't belong near service folks." My family wasn't exiled by me. They were exiled by the values they pretended to worship but never practiced. Their faces stiffened everywhere they went. Invisible judgment hung around them like humidity in a Carolina summer. My mother called a week later, not crying this time. Angry, then desperate, switching like gears, grinding in a cheap car. "Family stays together, Avery. That's what life is built on." I sat at my small table in the temporary lodging facility, coffee in hand, boots unlaced after early PT light from the blinds striping across my uniform bag. I let her silence stretch before I answered. Family didn't stay with me. The quiet that followed felt like a wall collapsing somewhere far away. She tried again. "You ruined his future." My voice came like a knife dipped in calm water. "He ruined his own. You just expected everyone else to carry the cost." She inhaled sharply like the air itself hit her. "You think you're better than us?" I answered with truth, not arrogance. "I think I held my oath when you wanted me to break it." She hung up again. This time, the silence afterwards felt clean. I moved out of the temporary quarters 2 weeks later, bought a small townhouse near Post Brick Front, modest, nothing grand, but it was mine. Paid for with deployments, long nights, bruised discipline, and the stubborn consistency that nobody could take from me. I signed the papers alone. The realtor offered a polite handshake, not pity, not surprise. Just respect. I walked through the empty rooms barefoot, feeling the hardwood under my feet, the echo of my steps bouncing softly off undecorated walls. Freedom has a sound. Sometimes it is nothing but your own footsteps without permission attached. I set my duffel on the floor. I didn't rush to fill the space. Emptiness is not loneliness when you earned it through escape. I decorated slowly. A framed American flag from deployment. Shadow box with my insignia. Polished boots by the entryway like sentinels guarding a new chapter. On the first Saturday, instead of sleeping in, I drove to volunteer at a female veteran support program off Bragg Boulevard. A converted office space walls painted warm, beige coffee, brewing too strong. Folding tables filled with pamphlets, job help, peer counseling, childcare corner. Women with stories wear strength differently. We don't brag. We show up. A young private sat across from me, shaking fingers, picking at her sleeves. "My boyfriend says I'm nothing without him," she whispered. I leaned forward gently. "The Army did not issue you strength. You grew it. Don't hand it away." She swallowed, eyes red, but shoulders lifted half an inch like a soldier beginning to remember her spine. I stayed all day, not because I had to, because service does not end when uniform hangs. It shifts shape. I started therapy too, Fort Liberty Behavioral Health. I walked in with my chin high, not out of ego, but out of refusal to hide healing. The therapist asked why I came. I said simply, "Because winning does not erase scars." Her head tilted, soft understanding in her expression. We talked about childhood, about fear disguised as loyalty, about silence carved into survival. She asked what I feared most. "Becoming like them," I answered. She nodded as if I had given the bravest confession. Growth is not loud. It is quiet rooms and hard truths and choosing every day not to run backward. I returned to the gym. Iron worked like meditation. Barbell against calloused palms. Sweat stinging eyes. Reps steady as heartbeat. Building muscle felt like reclaiming space inside my own bones. I also returned to the range. Rifle pressed against shoulder-ear protection, hugging my head. Breath steady, trigger squeeze, gentle, not forceful. Shooting was not aggression for me. It was control, precision. The sound, the stillness before, recoil, the focus. Each round a reminder that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers in measured breath and steady hands. Some evenings, I sat on my townhouse porch with coffee and the North Carolina twilight hanging thick like sweet air. Soldiers jogged past, kids rode bikes. Life moved simply, and simplicity felt luxurious after chaos. My stepfather tried contacting me once more, not calling this time, but leaving a voicemail voice low, trying to soften. We didn't handle things right. Evan needs support. He asked if maybe I could talk to someone, help him get a second chance. The gall wasn't surprising. Entitlement rarely dies cleanly. I deleted the voicemail. Not out of anger, out of clarity. People who only seek you when consequences come are not seeking you. They are seeking escape. My mother sent letters too. Long ones at first, then shorter when I did not respond. The last one arrived 3 months after the board. It said in shaky handwriting, "I hope someday you understand forgiveness." I sat with it for a moment. Then I put it away without replying. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is refusing to let the wound define you, and in that I was already miles ahead. Small moments defined that season. A neighbor waving, a soldier holding the door, a retired nurse at the commissary saying, "You're that sergeant who held her dignity." Good. The community remembered. Not for scandal, but for the stillness I carried. The army moved on, but it also didn't. Quiet nods in hallways. Respect in the eyes of new lieutenants who had heard the story whispered in officer development sessions, "Earn your place." Don't abuse it. And me. I learned solitude is not punishment. It is a gift to someone who was taught to survive in noise. My townhouse became a sanctuary. I cooked simple meals. I read. I cleaned my boots every Sunday morning like ritual even if I didn't need to. A soldier's discipline doesn't fade when the battle does. Some nights I sat at my small kitchen table polishing my challenge coin from that retired sergeant major thumb, tracing the edges, remembering every lesson carved into my life. You don't win by shouting. You win by standing. And I did. My reflection in the kitchen window at dusk looked different than the girl who grew up in a trailer believing silence was survival. The woman looking back understood silence could also be sovereignty. Nobody owned my future but me. I had space. I had peace. I had a front porch, a lawn, a key that opened my own door, and a life built not from gifts but from grit. I wasn't running from my family anymore. I had simply outgrown them. And growth, quiet and relentless, is the most powerful form of revenge. It happened on a Tuesday evening, the kind when the sky turns soft gold over Fort Liberty and the air feels calm enough to believe the world can be simple again. I had just finished wiping down my kitchen counter, the scent of lemon cleaner lingering in the quiet, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but intuition nudged. I answered. The silence on the other end wasn't empty. It was heavy, shaky, carrying the weight of someone who had just discovered the floor beneath their life was built on sand. Avery. His voice was thin, stripped of arrogance, stripped of rank, stripped of entitlement. Evan. He swallowed the sound brittle. I know you probably don't want to talk to me. I didn't respond. Silence has power. He rushed on desperate cracks in every word. I'm working at a warehouse. Part-time. They said maybe full-time if I prove myself. You could hear the disbelief in his tone, like he still couldn't process a world where he had to earn stability instead of inherit it. I kept breathing evenly. He continued, voice fraying, unraveling thread by thread. I made mistakes. I know that now. I need help, Avery. Could you maybe talk to someone for me? Maybe there's a way back in. Maybe I could appeal. My hand rested on the smooth edge of my counter. Not clenched, not shaking, just steady. He waited like a man expecting mercy he never once offered. The air hummed. The refrigerator buzzed quietly. The world did not bend around his apology. He whispered then, small and suffocating, I can't believe this is my life now. I finally spoke. Calm, emotionless, truth sharp as inspection day creases in a uniform. You slapped the wrong soldier. He inhaled like the words struck harder than any open palm ever could. I didn't say them as revenge. I said them as fact. He tried to rally his pride, but pride was a flag he no longer knew how to raise. Please, just talk to someone. You know people. You always earned respect. Another pause. I never realized how much until now. Funny how entitlement only respects strength after it loses leverage. I didn't comfort him. I didn't scold him. I didn't owe him emotional labor he never offered me. My voice stayed steady. I paid for my place in this uniform. And you tried to take it from me. I will not help you reclaim what you threw away. Another silence, this one sharp enough to draw blood. He exhaled a tired, trembling sound. I thought family. I cut him off gently. Family protects each other. You protected privilege, not me. He didn't argue. Defeat settled like dust on his side of the phone. When I hung up, my hand didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I felt nothing sharp, only clean, quiet certainty. Closure does not always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives in an ordinary kitchen on an ordinary evening when you choose dignity over history. I set my phone down, breathed in the stillness, and poured myself tea. Strength is not loud. It is not cruel. It is the moment you realize you no longer carry the weight someone tried to hand you. There is a kind of peace that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with confetti or congratulations. It comes in whispers, in routines, in mornings where the air feels lighter because you have finally stopped bracing for impact. Mine arrived one steady brick at a time, laid by discipline, carved by resolve, sealed by silence. 3 months after the board ruling, I stood in formation outside battalion headquarters uniform, pressed sharp enough to cut through doubt. An early Carolina sun warmed the courtyard, glinting off badges, reflecting off polished nameplates. Soldiers filled the field booths, aligned in perfect rows, cadence in breath alone. The command sergeant major stepped forward, voice booming, confident, proud in a way that was not theatrical, just true. Sergeant Holt, front and center. My legs moved before thought. Years of drill-folding instinct into bone. I marched up, halted, saluted. The words that followed weren't loud in my ears, they were grounded, solid, for consistent excellence in duty leadership under adversity and embodiment of Army values, you are hereby promoted to Staff Sergeant. Staff Sergeant. A step, a stripe, a statement. Earned, not gifted. Proven, not inherited. Hands clapped around us quietly. Not rowdy, not casual, respectful, genuine. The command sergeant major pinned my new rank firm but steady hands practiced from decades of seeing young soldiers grow into their own shoulders. Carry it well, Staff Sergeant. Yes, Sergeant Major. Salute. Shake. Return to formation. The sun seemed to catch the edges of my stripes like it understood the weight they carried now. After dismissal, I stepped aside to breathe. That's when I saw him, Colonel Mason Price, walking toward me slower than usual. Retirement had begun softening his frame, but not his presence. His eyes held the calm of a man who fought his battles and chose honor every time. Staff Sergeant Holt, he said, voice steady warm. You earned every inch of that. He reached into his pocket and pressed something into my hand. A challenge coin, his personal command coin. On the back were the words carved into metal. Lead quiet. Stand firm. My breath caught, not from surprise, but from the gravity of receiving something passed down only when truly merited. He nodded once. I returned it. Thank you, sir. He held my gaze. I've served long enough to say this: you didn't teach the Army how to treat you. You reminded it. And with that he walked away, shoulders square man, stepping toward retirement with dignity, leaving behind legacy and proof that leadership is not about rank, it is about spine. I left post early that weekend and drove east windows rolled down sea air, slowly replacing the dry pine scent of the installation. Wilmington, NC, quiet beach town waves, rolling lazy against shore gulls, calling without urgency. I walked barefoot along the sand, each step erasing the last salt wind, brushing my face like forgiveness given without being asked. The ocean didn't care about rank or wounds or family history. It didn't judge silence or valor. It simply existed untamed and steady. I sat near the edge of the tide, pulled out my small green notebook, the same one that traveled with me to deployments, barracks, field exercises, and finally into independence. I wrote, I didn't rise to spite them. I rose because I could. The page held the truth, not bitter, not triumphant, balanced. My journey was never about defeating someone else. It was about refusing to betray the person I was becoming, even when the world tried to drag me back. Waves crawled up to my ankles, cool and cleansing. I closed the notebook, leaned back on my palms, and watched a family laugh near the dunes, children running sand sticking to their legs, parents smiling without weight. A life like that didn't seem foreign anymore, just different and reachable. A week later, I laced my boots before dawn and stepped outside into cool morning air. The base still slept in patches, some lights glowing in barracks windows, some streets empty, some shadows stretching as lights flickered awake. I started my run-steady pace breathing, even feet-tapping rhythm across pavement. The cadence wasn't forced. It flowed, past the motor pool, past HQ, past the parade field where recruits had once learned to march. My cadence matched theirs, now not as a follower, not as someone learning, but as someone leading from within, silently, powerfully. At mile 2, the sun crested, painting the sky soft gold. The same gold that filled my kitchen the night Evan called. The same gold that filled the courtyard when I wore new stripes. Gold follows those who endure. When I returned home, sweat cooling against my skin, I paused at my doorway. My key, my house, my life. I whispered not for show, not for memory, but for me. They tried to break my rank. Instead, they sharpened my resolve. Not dramatic. True. I brewed coffee, sat at my small table. The world moved, and so did I. Forward. Not loudly, with purpose. And if you're here reading this, following this journey with me, then maybe you know something about dignity too. Maybe you've stood still while someone tried to shake you. Maybe silence was your armor and patience your victory. If you believe dignity wins in the end, subscribe and comment where you're watching from.